Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Snap Reports class. I hope you are enjoying your weekend or almost weekend, depending on where you are in the globe at this moment. So here from Toronto, it's 7:30 p.m. on Friday, and I thought that I could just spend some time with you before going to enjoy my weekend. I have some nice tricks that I wanted to share with you. In this type of lessons, these live classes, what I bring you is ways of automating your work in Excel. So whether you are new in Excel or more experienced, I'm sure that there will be always something new for me to share with you. Feel free to also share your comments and questions in the comments. I will do my best to address them. So welcome again. Today I am going to bring one particular scenario, one particular question that I received from one of my students. And I will show you in a minute what the question is, and we will see different ways of solving the question. So my point here today, or one of my points, is to bring you this thought. Just because we cannot solve something the first time the way we thought the solution could be built, it doesn't mean that there are not other solutions. Maybe there are other ways of solving the problem. And a lot of times, our first idea may not even be the best one or the more efficient. But in the end, what matters is that we are able to find a solution, and hopefully we will be able also to, along the time, test it and bring more options, test other options, and see if we can improve our initial proposal to solve the problem. So, okay, let me start by sharing my screen. I don't think I'm sharing my screen. Am I sharing my screen? Let me know there in the comments. Shyam, I think it is. I hope I'm not saying your name wrong. Forgive me if I am. So, no, I'm not sharing my screen. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me a moment here. It's been a while since I did my last. No, thank you. It's been a while since I did my last lesson live, so I'm a little bit out of practice, so bear with me here. So for those of you, before sharing my screen, let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Celia Alves. I am an Excel expert, and I develop custom solutions for companies to help them automate their work. I use Excel and other features in Excel like Power Query, Power Pivot. So my purpose here is to share a little bit of what I know and some of the problems I came across during my work, and help other people automate their work in Excel. It does not make sense if you are doing the same thing over and over again in Excel manually. Most likely 99% of probability that work can be automated, as long as you know how to teach Excel, how to do it for you. So do not spend hours and hours of your time doing the same task over and over again. If that is happening to you, then I advise you that you start researching, because most likely there is a way of saving some of that time. And with that time saved, you can do other things that you enjoy more. You can go home early or finish your work early. You can spend more time with your family, doing the things you like most, even maybe learning something new, or even maybe just doing your job. Maybe you are, let's say, an accountant or a data analyst, and you find yourself spending your time copying and pasting and doing things manually in Excel instead of doing the work that you were trained for and you were hired for. And that's unfortunate both for you and your company. So I hope these lessons help you a bit with solving that issue. Okay. So there's Rui Tavares, Alejandra, nice to see you. Abdel Sam, nice to see you. Abdeslam. Sorry, I'm so bad with names. I do not mean to say your names wrong, but you need to give me a little bit of credit here. Be patient. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so at this time you are seeing my screen, and every now and then I'll be looking to the side. I have a cheat sheet here to make sure I don't forget anything. So here's the problem, and if you are interested, I'm going to share the link to my Telegram channel. You will be able to find the file, the exercise file there. I added a dash there. Let me take that dash and make sure the link works properly. So in this link on my Telegram channel, I post the files that I use on my YouTube videos. Feel free to join. It's free to join and it's private. Nobody will be contacting you from other members. They cannot contact you within the group. So you can download the files from there. This lesson is live 24. So if you look for file L0024, you should be able to find the file there. Okay. And maybe I can put the final file there as well. At the moment, we only have the starting file. So if you want to follow along, feel free to download the file from there. Okay, so here's our problem. We have this table. This data set is very small because we don't need a big data set to explain what I want to explain today. What I will explain here works the same whether you have 4 or 5 rows of data like I have now and a couple of columns, or if you have much more columns and hundreds of thousands of rows. So the reasoning is the same, okay? But because we want to test our results, it's easier if we use just a small data set like the one we have here. So imagine that you are working with data, you are cleaning your data in Power Query. If you do not know what Power Query is, you will be able to see a little bit of what it is in this lesson, but I do advise you to search about Power Query because Power Query is available in Excel since version 2016. And imagine that you brought data. So Power Query allows you to bring data from other files, other folders, other data sources, or even to clean data that exists in the same file. To be easier for us today, I have the data in this very same file. It is this very little table here. If we click here, we can see that we have the table design tab there at the top. So this is an Excel table. And at some point, you already cleaned your data, removed rows and columns that you didn't want, and you got to this point where you have a column with items. It doesn't matter. In fact, when I received the question is written here at the top. I will explain it in a minute. So I just created this mock text data. This is not real life data, but it illustrates the situation. So the question is, I want to add a column to my table in Power Query. So this question, it doesn't say here, but the challenge was to create that extra column in Power Query that sums up the row values of all the columns that have a header that starts with 47 and ends in 1. Okay. So every time I have 47, and then it doesn't matter what the number is that comes after, and then at the end 1, I want to consider that column to then sum the values in that row and add the sum at the end. So for example, here 4721, yes, we want this column. 4791, yes, we want that. 4792, no, it doesn't end in 1. This one does not start with 47, and this one starts with 47 and ends in 1. So we want, in this case, the first 2 columns plus the last one. So if we were doing this manually here, we would have 1 plus 2 plus 5, and it makes 8. And then 3 plus 4, 7, plus 7, 14. Here in this row, I would want the value 14. The challenge is, though, that every time, let's say this is part of a reporting process in Excel, and every time we get new data, let's say the next week, we need to run the process again, the same report, the same procedure, and we may have different column names. And as you know, if you have some experience with Power Query, that brings us some challenges, because when we create different steps in Power Query refers most of the times to the column names to record those steps and then allow us to repeat the process the next time. So that's the challenge, because the column names will be changing. So I cannot really record hard-coded. I cannot hard-code the column names, because the next time, who knows what we are going to get. So that's the challenge. Okay, let me just double check here the comments. A lot of hellos. Nice to see you, everyone. There's Tanya there. Thank you for joining me. Okay, so I will show you a couple of methods. The first time I tried to solve this question, because I do enjoy Power Query and I like playing with the M language, which is the programming language behind the scenes. You can do a lot in Power Query just by clicking the different buttons in the user interface, and you can do wonders for your company, for your work, save a lot of time just with that. But sometimes we do not have buttons on the ribbon, in Power Query for all the functions that we have that exist in the M language. And sometimes some of the problems require us to use some of those functions that are not available in the user interface. And I like discovering those functions and play with them. So I started there, but then it didn't go well. I will show you what happened in my first trial. I will show you that at the end. What I had to do then was, okay, this is not working, but I need to find a solution. Let me see if there's other way of getting the result we need. For example, do I really need to add that column in Power Query? Maybe I just need to have the results somehow in my spreadsheet, and it could probably, it maybe could be in using formulas or pivot tables. So if I do not really need to have that column, extra column that we want to build, necessarily built in Power Query, then that there are other solutions. And I will show you a couple of ways I came up with to solve this question. And I'm sure there are many other ways. So these are just some of the options that I came up with for this lesson, but there's probably other options. And in the end, I will show you, because I'm a little bit stubborn and I thought, well, there must be a way of doing this in M, using M language in Power Query. And I went to research a little bit, and I ended up finding the functions that I needed to solve my problem. Okay, so let's start. Okay, first thing we need to do, I will, in all the methods, I will load the table to Power Query to arrange the data a little bit first, and then we will use the result of Power Query to bring to our spreadsheet the different options and build different solutions. Okay, so let me zoom out a little bit. If you have trouble with zooming, with not seeing, let me know. So first thing is, I'm going to load this table. As you can see here at the top, name of the table is table items. Here in the table design, name of the table is items, okay? Click anywhere in the table, and then you come to the data tab, and then you choose from table/range, okay? This will open up the Power Query editor, and we'll load this table into that editor, into Power Query. Let's wait a little bit. Okay, there we go. I can do a little bit of zoom. Let's see if this works. Okay, and we have our data. So one of the things I thought was, okay, I need to find a way of identifying which columns matter for what I need to sum. And later I discovered that these column headers were account were account numbers. And so I'm going to call them special accounts if they meet the criterion to be part of the sum. This is starting with 47, ending with 1, and regular accounts otherwise. Power Query, when loading the table, created 2 steps. The first step is to load the table, is the step source, and then the other step is the change type step. I'm going to remove this step here because we don't need, well, I deleted it and I wanted to show you. If we look at that step, let me close and do again this card, because this is a very important matter in this case. Sometimes it does not matter if we leave that step there from table range. But if we leave it in this case, it will cause us a problem, because if you see here, when we look at the bar, the formula bar, and the formula bar shows us the M code that Power Query creates automatically, we can see that all the column names are hard-coded in here. And as I already mentioned, the next time the column headers might be different, maybe the same, maybe they might be the same, or they might be different. So if there is a column name, for example, for 721, if that column name does not come in our data the next time, when we are running the query, Power Query comes here and says, oh, I cannot find column 4721, error, I'm done here until you solve this problem, this error. So we cannot have this hard-coded in here. Okay, so that's why I'm going to remove this step. Okay. So I was saying I want to classify the different accounts by type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to classify these and going to do the following. So I have a column item, and I have a number of other columns. And by the way, maybe I should maximize here my screen to help you. Okay, and maybe like that, so that you can focus and have, if you are watching from a smaller device, you can see better. Okay, so the column item is always there. It won't change from week to week, for example. So I can refer to this column, and I can right-click and say unpivot other columns. Okay, when I do this, what I got, let's see, from this step to that one, sofa was 1 row only, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 accounts. When we do this step and pivot other columns, we created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows for sofa, and then item sofa, and the attribute corresponds to the account only once, five times, 1 per each one of the account numbers. And then we have the value. So maybe we can just rename these columns. We can just double click here and rename, or I can even rename here. Instead of attribute, I'm going to just name this column account. And then the value can stay like that. It could be amount. Just let's leave it like that. Okay, and now I want to add a column that indicates the type of account. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, let me just double check here if I'm forgetting anything. I don't think I am. Okay, let's do. So add column, and I'm going to add a conditional column. Conditional column. What's the name that I want for this column? Power Query is asking. I'm going to say account type, or even just type, just to be shorter. And what's the condition? If the account equals, no, it's not equals, begins with 47, and then it's not just this. We also want ends with 1, but the problem is that this dialog window here does not give us the option to add and conditions. So I'm going to start by doing just this first one, and then we will take a look at the code. We'll figure out what we need to use for the second portion. If it begins by 47, then I want it to show the value special. Otherwise, I want it to have the value regular. Okay. So there we go. We have a column, but not at this point, we are only looking at the beginning. So for example, this column, this record here, 4792 should not be considered special because it does not end with 1. So we need to come here. Let me maybe make this a little bit bigger. And in here, we need to say, if, look at the function we have here, text dot starts with. The account field starts with 47. You can come to the, let's see if we have here, you can come to the Power Query M function reference and look for that function here. So if we go here, text dot starts with, we have text.start and starts with. We could use either of these functions. In this case, Power Query automatically chose this one. So we are going to use this one. And in here, you can see an example and an explanation how this function works. We are not going to spend time on that. What I'm going to show you is that we also have, besides dot starts with, of course, we also have text dot ends with. So we are going to use this function text dot ends with in our formula there. So, okay, if text dot starts with 47, and now I'm going to copy this, Control C, and then here I'm going to say end, Control V, text dot ends with account, and the account column ends with 1, then, and we can even put a parenthesis here to say that if the condition starts here and ends here, okay, then if it meets the two conditions, call it special, else call it regular. Let's test. Okay, so now this record here that I mentioned before, it's displaying the correct designation. Okay, so we can load this data to our Excel file, Excel spreadsheet. Maybe we should, in fact, change the data type now. So item is text, account is text. We don't need to make calculations, although they are whole numbers. We can either choose text or whole number there. The value could be currency or decimal number. If it is an accounting procedure, we should use currency. At this moment, I'm going to choose decimal number just because we have only whole numbers, or in fact, we could use whole number. Let's choose whole number. But in a real scenario, I advise you to choose the currency data type. If you do not need more than 4 decimal places, then the currency data type is enough. The other one will spend more memory, will take more memory in your machine. So, which is relevant in case your data is a big data set. And the type column needs to be text, correct? Okay. So here you go. We started with this data, and now we have the exact same data arranged another way and with a new column at the end classifying each one of the records. So we came from that to this, okay? And now we can load this data, home, close and load to. And I'm going to load this as a table in the existing worksheet, let's say here. And let's do OK. And we will get our data here. Okay. So far, we were not able yet we did not get an answer yet for what we wanted. I wanted, remember here, I wanted a column to give me the sum of the rows that meet that criteria here, both starting with 47 and ending with 1. I don't have that sum yet. So if we do not need to maintain this layout and then have that extra column at the end, if we can, how do you say, if you can let go of that, if that's not fundamental that you keep this layout, then we can change the layout to a tabular layout, which is this one. And in here, we can now find the answer another way. So let me put here, I'm going to add a new column, a new row, Control Shift Plus. I'm going to say here method 1, okay? And just a different color here in bold. Okay, so one way could be using Excel functions, right? We can, for example, say, let me find the list of items. Let me list the items here. So I go item, and in here I can say unique, and the unique function allows me to select this column. Because I'm working with a table, I can simply click that column and do not worry about references like B16 down to B whatever. I just click the column and I know it's table items 2 and item column. Okay. Give me a unique list of these items. There we go. We have the unique list. If you wanted them sorted, okay, let's use the sort function and nest the unique function inside the sort function, and there you go. Now you have all the items sorted alphabetically. Okay, in here I'm going to say special, or I'm going to say regular, doesn't matter, and then special, indicating the 2 types of accounts that we have. Make it bold. And now I can use, for example, sum ifs and find the values, calculate the sum of the values that we have here. Okay, so I can say equal sum if s, which is more flexible and powerful than just the function sum if. Okay, the first thing we need to indicate is the sum range. What I want to sum is column value, and again, just point to the column in the table, comma, what is the criteria? Well, I have 2 criteria for this cell. One is I want to look at the rows that correspond to this item flag here on the left. And then I want to look at the rows for flag that say regular, so regular account, okay? So I will say criteria range. So the criteria range will be the item. The item needs to meet these criteria here. If I refer to this cell with a hash sign at the end, you see now it's considering all the lists that resulted from using that dynamic array set of functions, the function unique and the function sort, okay? Comma, I need another criteria, which is the type. So type needs to be equal to this value here, regular, okay? And enter. And there you go. So now we have immediately the sum for flag, regular. Let's see here. Let's see sofa, which is the first one. Sofa, it says 7. So 7 for regular are these 2 values here. 3 plus 4 is 7. And we could now verify the other ones. They are correct. I'm going to copy the formula from here, Control C, escape. I'm not going to drag, because if I drag, The references here to column value, to column item, they will move as well. We can lock that. We would have to use the structured reference language to refer to the different columns in the table, but I'm not going to spend time in that today. So there we go. I'm just going to copy, but now, of course, at this point in this column, I want to refer to special. So I need to change that reference there. And it says for flag, the total for special accounts is 14, or let's say sofa kits, which is the first one in our table. It's 8. Let's say sofa, special, special, and special. So this one and these two other ones, it totals 8. So this is correct. And now the beautiful thing about it is that, let me add another column here, another row first, before I show you the beauty that I was referring to. The beautiful thing about this is that now we can add something to our data and refresh the process in one go. We do not have to repeat this work anymore. Let me save the file. Okay. Let's imagine we have here 4701. We don't have that code yet. And now maybe we have 4702. So the first column will meet the criteria, will need to be added. Let me add just once. It doesn't matter what the values are. So for example, for sofa or for flag, we now have one more. Okay, so instead of 11, it should be 12, and instead of 14, it should be 15. And all the other ones will also add one unit, but I need to refresh my query first, okay? Let's also add a new item here. So let's just put new and add all ones and see what happens. So we need to get one new item and we need to get the sums updated. So are you ready? Right-click in this table that contains the result of the query, or we could also click here or that button there, or come to data and click refresh all. All that works. Refresh all, that's it. Voila. There's a new item here. 3 regular, 4 special. Specials are 1, 2, 3, and 4. And everything else updated as I mentioned before. So there you go, method 1. We didn't have to build that difficult task in Power Query. Let me see how things are going here in the chat. Let me know if you have any questions. Let's see here. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. So we have method 1 delivered. We didn't have to build anything else. We didn't have to worry about that M language in Power Query. That might be a little bit challenging for some of us. So that's one way of doing. Let's jump into method number 2. I'm going to rename this query here. Rename, where is it? Rename method 1. Okay. And now I'm going to duplicate this query. Duplicate. Okay, and I'm going to call it method 2. The other method is to use a pivot table. We may think, oh, but I really wanted to have that column. I really wanted to see all the columns, all the account columns, all the detail by account, by item, and then have the sum for special accounts. Okay, so one of the ways we can achieve that is with a pivot table. We could either build the pivot table, and let me, because now it is small, this is small, this is small. Okay, let me just go back to full screen. Okay, there you go. I was saying we could have built a pivot table directly from the table that we just loaded in method 1, in the query for method 1. I'm going to take the chance to show you, in case you don't know yet, that Power Query can load your result of your query directly to a pivot table. So we will just do a separate query here. So we duplicated the query, renamed method 2, and I will use the exact same data and we'll load these as pivot table. So I'm not even going to do anything in this query. Close and load to. And now here you see here, I can choose load to a pivot table report. In the existing worksheet, because I want to see everything side by side, it's safe to put it here because this table is not going to grow to the left or to the right side. So I can put it here and say, okay. There you go. We have the placeholder for the pivot table. We have the different items, the different columns that come from our query. And we could say, okay, bring me the items to the rows, then bring me the type to the columns, and bring me the value to the values area. And automatically it sums. I'm not going to worry about formatting numbers or changing column names, anything like that here. And there you go. Now we have the totals. So if you check flag 1215, cattle, also sorted alphabetically, the pivot table by default also sorts alphabetically. So we can see we have the same numbers, same values. We have the advantage of having totals, grand totals by row and by column that we could turn off if we do not want them in the pivot table's properties. And we can, in the design I meant, if you go to pivot table analyze or here to design and then here grand totals, you can turn that off, okay? But let's not worry about that. And in this case, if you say, I really wanted to see the column names there, okay, so we can bring the account item to above, to below. No, here to the columns type, and then below type I can put the account name. So let me close here to have more room and close there. There you go. So now we have the regular accounts. We see the total here, and we have the special accounts, and we see the special total here, and then we have the grand total summing up all the accounts regardless of the type. Okay, so in this case we achieved a little bit more than before because now we are able to have details by account, by item, and by column type. We do have one extra thing that was not in the request, which is one column for the regular total, the total for the regular accounts, and the request was asking just for one column for these special accounts. Okay, maybe we can live with this, and maybe there are things we could do about it, but for now it's good enough. Let's just test method number 2. I'm going to adjust the end of my table. So what happens now is that all this data that I put here before is not considered part of the table. So when we refresh our data, we should see the new item disappear and these two other accounts disappear as well. Let me just save just in case Excel crashes here on me. And let's go and do data and refresh all. It will refresh both queries and the pivot table there. So there you go. Here we got rid of the new item. We have less account numbers, and here we only have the 5 account numbers that we had in our data at the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 account numbers. So there you go. Method number 2. So far, we got 2 methods. We did not have to put a lot of effort in Power Query. I do like a lot working with Power Query, but for those of you who are just starting with Power Query, you can see that you can maybe start with small steps, with baby steps, do what you can in Power Query, and then figure out something else, another way of dealing with your scenario and come up with a solution using the result of the Power Query, of the data that you were able to get in your queries. So this pivot table, like I said, could have been produced directly from this other table because the data is exactly the same. I duplicated the query and I did not do any changes to that query. Okay, let's see. There's Alejandro there, clapping. Thank you. And we have Antonio Francisco Ferreira. Thanks for sharing. My pleasure. And okay, so are you ready for method number 3? Let me know. So now method number 3 will use a special feature there in Power Query. We will not get the detail by columns. We will only get the result by type. A little bit like we have here, similar to what we have here. And we will then try find exactly what was requested by using a couple of functions in M language. Okay, so let me maximize. Hey, that's Ros du Soleil in the house. And Alejandra, she's ready. Thank you so much. So let's do that. Okay, so let me bring my full screen here. And let's do it. Okay, so now method number 3. I'm going to save the file. I'm going to go to Data, Queries and Connections. I'm going to duplicate this query. I'm going to rename it as method 3. Okay, I know it's small, but nothing much. I just changed the name there, method 3. I have the same steps that we built before, so far so good. And now that I have my data organized in tabular layout, one column per field, field item, field account number or name, field value, it could be dollar, it could be currency, or it could be quantity, it could be amounts, it doesn't matter. And then here, the designation distinguishing the accounts by special or regular, depending on how the column name is and following the criteria that we had. All the accounts that start with 47 and end with 1 are special accounts, and we want to get the result of the sum of all the values for each one of the items that belong to special accounts. Okay, so one thing that we can use here now is the group by. So if we come to home and then group by here at the top, let me see if I can zoom in here, group by, see? If you click this button here, let me zoom out now. Let's see if it comes. Okay, there's a dialog box there. I want to group by item, right? But then I also want to have the totals when I group by type of account. So we need to come here to advanced. Let me maybe try to zoom in again. Advanced. So group by item and then add grouping. Then after item, I want to group by type. Okay. And the new column name will be total amount or just amount. Total, just total. I guess we can say like that. What's the operation we want to do? We want to sum. Okay. Sum what? Sum the values that are in column value. Okay. And that's it. So that's what we need. Let's do. Oh, and there's another thing here. Let me. No, everything is good. Okay, so okay. Let me do zoom out. So there you go. So now we have what we needed, item, type, and the total. And this would be probably good enough. If we want, we can load the data as is. If we prefer to have the data the same on a layout similar to the one we built with the functions in Excel, then we can pivot this column and create one column for special, one column for regular, and have the totals in there. So I'll take this opportunity to show you how to do that. To do that, we select the column type. The values in the column type are the values that we want to become, we want them to become column headers. I want a column that says special, named special, and I want a column header that says regular. So thinking that way, it makes me realize, okay, so this is a column that I want to pivot, okay? I want to transform these values into column headers or column names. So select the column and come to transform, and we can choose here pivot column. Let me zoom in a little bit in case you are watching from a small device. You see this button under the transform tab. Click that button, pivot column. And in here, we will choose, okay, values. Where are the values? When it's blinking a little bit here, maybe I should zoom out. I guess my computer is not liking that zoom. Okay, so it asks us, okay, so if you are going to create two columns, one named special and one named regular, where are the values to put under each one of those columns? And I say they are under the total column. So the values are under the total column. Okay. Then we have the option under advanced options. What do you want to do with different values? For example, let's say you have, for the same item, you have different values that you can aggregate. I don't want to aggregate. I just want to place the values that we have here. So don't aggregate, and okay. And there you go. So now we have item, name, special, account with the sum, and regular with the sum. So now we are ready to close and load too. And let's load this as a table in the existing worksheet. Let's maybe put it here. Let's see. And okay. So there we go. There's our table. If you see, it's the exact same thing we have there at the top. We can, in this case, because it's a table, come here to table design and activate the total row if you find it useful. We can activate here. We have multiple options to aggregate the columns, the values in the column. We need sum. So if you want to see the sum of all the special account items and all the regular account items. And that's it. So now the same thing, we could test. Let's test. So if we add this new item and we add these two accounts as before, let me save this. We can, is everyone, okay, I was just checking if my screen was on, it is. Then we can refresh all and see what happens. So the grand totals 75 and 100. The special total, we will have these as special 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7 for this column, which is special for the new item, 8 and 9. So the total should go up in 9 here, from 100 to 109. Let's check that. So data, refresh all. It will refresh all the queries, method 1, 2, and 3, if you can see here on the right. So there you go. The formula is updated here. We are using dynamic array functions, and the pivot table updated, the totals there, and our new query that we just built using group by in Power Query brought us the totals that we wanted. So for flag, the result before was 14. It became 15, the sum of the special accounts for that item. Okay, so we are left with, we have one method left for today. Let me check here, Control-C, Control-V, method number 3. Let me maybe put here, prepare for method number 4. And now method number 4, we are going to have some fun with it, a little bit of extra fun, at least for me it's fun when I use the M code. Let me check here, see how everybody is doing. How is everyone? Still here? Thank you for that. I hope this is being useful for you. If you have questions or comments, let me know. So, are you ready for some M code? What the heck is that M code thing? So, for those of you who may not be familiar, when we have those functions, those formulas appearing there in Power Query, those are written in M language. It's a programming language. Power Query records the steps alphabetically for us every time we click something in the user interface to say group by, add a column, add a conditional column, remove rows, everything, all the steps that we do. Taking those actions, they translate into some kind of code. And there are a lot of different M functions. As I showed you before here, if you look for Power Query, Microsoft Docs, M language reference, something like that, Power Query M functions, you will come here. And in here, you see all the different types, classes or categories of functions. So for example, to work with columns, with tables, table functions, we have all these different types of categories of functions, and then more functions inside that. So for example, one that we are going to use now is table column names. So table column names, you can find it here. One good exercise is to scroll by this list and start getting acquainted with all the different possibilities. And I should put this bigger, sorry about that. I was showing you it. We should get acquainted with all the possibilities we have here. We don't need to learn all the function names. We do not need to learn to know them all by heart, nothing like that. The good thing is to be aware that they exist, to know where to find them, and every time we have a new challenge, see if we can find something here that helps us with that challenge. Okay, so table column names, you can find it here, or you could even start column. Let's see, column names. I'm not sure if it finds, it does. So even if you do not type table dot first, if you just look by column names, you will see that there are two functions that refer to column names. So we will use this function, table dot column names. If you enter a table name, it will return the column names in that table. So that's one example of one of the functions that we will use, okay? So let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this query again, duplicate. And I'm going to rename this query. I'm going to rename this query method 4. Okay, now we need to do a couple of adjustments here. Let me zoom in, okay? I will want to know the column names of all the columns we have at the beginning. So I'm going to separate this query into two queries, okay? From step 2, let me just double check here. I'm going to delete them, okay? Exactly. Let me just delete everything from here. Right click and delete until end. You see this option here? And delete. So we are left with the first step. So let's imagine this was my first, you can imagine this, you can think of this as my first attempt. So I was trying to solve that problem that I thought it would be immediate to solve in Power Query. Okay, I took the approach that I have taken other times, which is solve these manually for one scenario and then try to replace pieces of the code to make this dynamic. Okay, I loaded my data. I have my column here, my table here. And I know that I want to sum certain columns. these columns will not always be the same, but they will always follow the same criteria. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do that sum for this particular case, and then I'll find a way to make it dynamic, okay? So I go, okay, 4721 starts with 47, ends with 1. I want this. Control, 4791, I want that one. I do not want that one. I do not want that one. I want this one. Anything else? I want this other one. Okay. And with these columns selected, I came to add column, and I come to this button standard because I know that this button offers me the possibility of performing some basic operations, and I want to perform an addition, so I choose add. And there we go. We have the column addition. We could call this column special accounts amount. Let's call it like that. I can double click and rename. It will create an extra step. In this case, I'm going to just say special accounts total or amount. It doesn't matter. Okay. So I have my total there. If we check our function, so in this step, inserted sum, we could rename the step. It's good to rename the steps as we build our queries to make it make more sense for us later when we come back and see our work. And if we look at here, we see that we have a function list.sum. Makes sense because I performed an addition. And I have curly brackets. Curly brackets indicate a list, okay? And then I have the list of the different fields that were included in the sum. I say, okay, so this is easy. I just need to find the list of the items that I want to sum, make it dynamic, find a way of making Power Query determine that list in a dynamic way, and then I can bring that query into here. Okay, so okay, I want to do that before I added this column that I just added. So I want to refer to the step source. So to make that easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set step number 2, right click and say extract previous. And this will split this query into 2 queries. It asks me what the name is that I want to give to the query that contains the previous steps. I'm going to say just items, which is the original name of the data in the data table, and okay. Okay, so now we have these query items just with the source step, reading the data that we have in our table, our data source, and we have method for that starts with the result of the items query. So the source now is items, and then it has that special column. So I'm going to set the method for aside for now, and here I'm going to create a new query. So right click, new query, and let's say not here, new query, recent sources, more. Where can I find? Why can't I find? No, that's not what I want. Something. I just want to create a new query, and now all of a sudden I can't remember what to do that. How to do that? New source. Okay, let me just one of those blanks that come to us every now and then. So I'm going to do close and load 2. I'm going to load as connection only. I don't want to load everything. And then I'm going to start from my spreadsheet here. I'm sure the option was there. All queries. Yeah, it was there. It'd be in front of my eyes, but I somehow couldn't see it. So let's come here, data, get data from other sources and from blank query. That's what I want. And now this query, the purpose of this query is to get the list of the names that are the ones that I always want to consider every time I get new data. Okay, I'm going to name this query. I'm going to name it, let's say, special accounts. I'm going to name it column names. Okay, and what this query does is it gives me the table dot column names. There we go. Of what? Of the column, of the table that I have. Oh, here, there. Of table items. So I can just type in items and enter. Items. There's an S missing there. Control Shift Plus. Okay, so let me see if this, table, no, IntelliSense is tricking me here. Table dot column names. There we go. Finally, we got it right. So, okay, let me double check here if I'm not forgetting anything. So we have this list of all the names. From here, I will want to determine to pick only the columns that interest me as special accounts. Okay, one way could be, if you do not want to play with the M code, transform this to a table using this button here, and then use the options that you will get on the filter at the top of the column, and say use those options, text filter, start with 47, and then ends with 1 to get the names that you want. In this case, we do not, I'm going to use some M functions here. So I'm going to create a new step, home, and a new step here. I'm going to refer to that previous step, and I'm going to say, by clicking there, list.select. Okay, that's the function I want. And what is it that I want to say? I want to enter a list and then indicate the function that filters the list to pick what I want. So the list is in the step source, so that's correct. Okay, and then I want to say, I clicked here on the side, so bear with me. I want to say each underscore. What this means is, let me remove this so it looks nicer to you. And let me close here. Okay, let me repeat. New step. And in this step, I'm going to say, select the items from the source, which is a source step, which is a list. Each item represented by an underscore, okay, needs to start with 47. So, okay, I will use that function that we saw before. So text dot starts with which text? The text represented by underscore, which represents each one of these items for each one of the, let's call it rows, although it is a list, not a table, comma, and the substring it needs to be at the beginning is 47. Okay. We have that, and we also want the item to end in 1. So then I go end text dot ends with, okay, which text? The text represented by underscore, which represents each item on the list. So this function will be applied to each one of the items represented by underscore each time. And the text needs to end in 1. If you check the documentation for these functions, you will see that it says, I wanted to enlarge that. Let me just, Okay. Still no. Okay, so let's and there. Oh, text. IntelliSense is always doing this to us. Let's see here. So there we go. So, okay, let's see. What we have here is from the previous list named source, we want to select the items that abide by this rule. The text starts with 47 and the text ends with 1. And because I'm using these functions, if the next time I have different column headers, this function will run through the list we have and will give us the new list of column headers that verify the criteria that time. Okay. So we have the list of names that we wanted. So I'm happy. And now I say, okay, I have the query column names. Now, if I go back to my method for here, where I have these fields in a list, I can Control X, I'm going to cut that, and I can say column names. I'm also going to remove the curly brackets because column names is already a list, so I don't need the curly brackets to indicate that it is a list. So I just need to do that. Who thinks this is going to work? I'm wondering if any of you would have done the same thing. Who's betting on me? Let's see if we have any reactions there. Okay, so let's see what happened. The step was already confirmed here. Sorry, I just created one new step. And let's scroll to the right. Now our special accounts total is showing error. Not good. So yeah, it doesn't work. Why does it not work? Let me go back. I bet on you, Alejandra. Well, you lost your money, my dear. It didn't work. So let me go back to what we had here. Why does this not work? So I have the list of the same items. This query here, let me open here. This query column names is listing the same values that I have here, the same column headers that I have here. Why does this not work? Because if you notice, I have square brackets. And square brackets in the M code are used in this scenario to indicate the column. So it's saying sum the value that you have in this for each row in the column 4721, 4791, etc. The result of the list that we got here does not gives us this as a text piece. You see, we do not have square brackets. So in here, what we are getting from that list is the same as having this. Okay, and then the same for all the other items. Double quotes as column names. It's not the same thing. So this does not work. I need to do something else, find something else. And this is where I stuck. Okay, so how can I indicate, how can I refer to a column header as the column itself? Alejandra, she's crying. Yeah, I was crying too. I was not happy with that at all. So I was struggling. How can I make this work? How can I find a way of referring to the column as a whole, as a field, and not to the text that is in the column header, because that's what we are getting from that list. So I went to research on that library here that we have for the M language. I probably did some research online as well. And what I ended up finding is I want to refer to the record, to the values in the record. The record is represented in a table by each one of the rows. So I want to sum in each record certain fields of that record. So if you find here, if you look here, you will find many different functions for records. In this case, I will use records select fields. This is good because it returns a record which includes only the fields specified in list fields. Oh, that's great because, so for example, here, record select fields, let me maybe put this bigger. If I indicate a record represented here, so a record that has order ID, customer ID, item, price, and then I say, I only want this list of fields, then it returns me the record with those fields only. And we already have a list to put in here. It's the list with those column names that we created before. So we're good for this. Then this will still not work because this will be returning me a record. And then I want to sum the values that are in each field of that record or the fields that are selected from that record. So for that, I will use record.fieldValues. Okay. And this returns a list of the value, the field values. Let me see. Record field values returns a list of the field values in a record. So it takes the fields and gives us only the values in those fields, not mentioning the field names. And then once we have only values, then we can sum. Okay, so that's exactly what we need. So here's how we can change this operation here. Okay, I want to sum. Let me put this bigger here for you. Gosnell is saying, sounds like you already know the fix and you're just teasing us. Yeah, I know the fix now, but I had to sweat a little bit to get there. And that's why I'm here today, is to share that fix with you. Maybe it will be useful for you at some point. Okay, so list.sum. I want to sum. Okay, let me go back here. Let me remove here this list. Here we want to put column names, which is the name of this query that generates the list for us, okay? Let me delete here. Here I'm going to put column names. It is not going to work immediately, so bear with me. Column names, okay. This is a list, and this is the list of the fields that I want to pick from the record, okay? From each row here, row for sofa, I have a number of records. Some of the records I want to pick, some of the records I don't want to pick, okay? So from that record, I want to select some of the records, okay? So what I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a space here. I'm going to do list dot, not list, record dot select fields. Okay, that's the function I want. Okay. Open parentheses, and now it says indicate the record and then the fields as any. The record is represented by an underscore to say the record that is in the list where this formula lives, okay, comma, and what is the list of records that you want to choose is the list represented by column names, okay. So I'm going to need another parenthesis here. This one is for record select fields. This other one is for list.sum. But if I try to sum here, it's not going to work because it cannot sum fields. It cannot sum fields. So I need to say, give me only the list, only the values from those fields, okay? So outside record.select fields, I'm going to say record.field values. Record.field values. Fields values. Okay. Values, open parentheses, not that. Okay, I need another parenthesis here at the end to pair with the one that I just entered. Okay, so here we go. We want to sum the field values of the fields that correspond to this list of fields. So this now should be okay. Fingers crossed. Let's see if that works. Let's see. And there you go. And we are almost done. Almost. There's one last challenge. I wonder if anyone can identify what that challenge is. It is related to the last step that we usually do at the end before loading our query. Does anyone want to say what is the last step that we usually do before we load our query to our spreadsheet? I'm going to give it a couple of seconds there because I know there's a little bit of lag in between my talk and the moment where you finally hear what I say. What is that step? What is that step? What is that step? What's the last step? Still waiting. So when we are creating a query at the end, we always need to. What is it that we want to do with? No idea. Haha. Says Hal. At the end, we always should be careful to remember that we need to change type, Tanya says. Well done, Tanya. Exactly. At the end, we want to change type. And some of the columns already have the type identified, like the one we have here that automatically, when we added, we said that we wanted to have an addition. Power Query already suggested the type number. We could change it to currency or whole number. Let's leave it like that. But all the other columns are not, do not have the data type identified yet. Okay. So we need to do that. With item, we are good because item is a column that we will always have in our data, and it's data type text. The problem is that these other columns may change their names the next time. And if that happens, then what happens? So if you see here, when I change the type for the column item, on the step that was created, and let me put this bigger again, on the step that was created here, we see the name of the column hard-coded saying type text. If I select these columns and change type for each one of them, I will get their names hard-coded in here. That will be a problem the next time because I know that these column names may change the next time. So now what? More hem code to solve this? Well, probably we could come up with a way of trying to change type for a number of columns dynamically. But there's a trick that it's very cool, and it's so much easier and much faster to implement. And that's the following. I'm going to select the columns that I have for granted all the time at this point, which are the columns item and column special accounts total. And I'm going to unpivot the other columns. So right click and pivot other columns. Okay. We got the two columns attribute, which are the account names, and the value. And the value here, I can say, I want this to be a number, decimal number, currency, whatever the type you want. I'm going to just choose the decimal number, type number here. And now when we pivot this back, so now we are going to select and go pivot. So now we need to undo what we just did. what will happen is that all the columns will assume the data type that is in the column value, which is fantastic. It's exactly what we want. So let's try that. Let's come to transform pivot column. And here, the values are in column value there, okay? And again, under advanced, I do not want to aggregate. And okay, and look at that. I have my columns with their corresponding data type without having to code their names in the code here. So if we look through the different steps, we can see that those column names 47, blah, 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 1, they are not mentioned there at all. Okay, so this will be dynamic. It will serve what we need. So home, close and load 2. Going to choose only create connection just because I'm not sure. Well, I wasn't sure. Yes, there were multiple queries. So everything is loaded as a connection only. And method 4, right click, load to. Let's now load this as a table and put it here. And okay. Change data type. Nice. Yeah. Some people are excited about the trick that I just showed. And that's it. So now we have the columns. Exactly the request, the initial request. There's only one thing, which is the special accounts total shows it on the left. I'm going to leave it there because, again, if we try to sort this and put it to the end in our query, it will refer to these column names. It will hard code these column names. We do not want that, so I'm going to leave this column here. That's, I think, the closest I can get at the moment for that request. So again, we can test. Let's say I want to shrink this. I do not want the new item to show. I do not want these other columns. So only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. And then 3 of them are special accounts. Let's come into here. Let's do data. Refresh all. And there you go. So it shrunk here. Special accounts. We have all the accounts now, only 5. As you see, we had no problem with refreshing the query. Everything came through without any issues, despite the fact that some of the columns are different this time. They are, well, let's test. Let's make it just one more column here. Let's make this 47, 3, 1. And let's just add this new column. Okay, just to test, just to make sure that everything is good. Right click, refresh, or I'm going to do refresh all, in fact. So data. If I do on the table, it just refreshes that table. Refresh all refreshes everything so that we can compare. And now there we go. So for example, for flag, the special sum, special accounts sum is 15. In here, for flag, we have 15. And for all the other methods, we get the same thing. And we could test and check all the other items. So there you go. That was my exercise for today. I do appreciate your company throughout the lesson. Thank you for having joined me. Let me maybe come up here. And yeah, so I'm not sharing. I don't need to share my screen. Let me bring this screen here. So thank you everyone for joining me today. I was surprised to see a lot of people on a Friday night or Saturday in the morning, for some of you maybe. But I've been planning to prepare these lessons. I have them in my drawer, but if I'm recording them and then editing to then publish, it takes a lot more work, and it ends up you end up having to wait more time for these lessons. So I thought I'll just jump in live and try to do my best to give you content. And I hope it's useful. Feel free to leave your comments. Feel free to share this with your colleagues. I was planning the class to be shorter, but it turned out to be almost 90 minutes. I'll try to do shorter lessons the next time, but give me your feedback about that as well. And I'll see how I can evolve from here and bring you the best content possible from what I learn every day. So let's see just some of your comments. Muito obrigado. It means thank you very much. From Portugal, Rui Tavares, Tanya, thanks for powering through to find a comprehensive solution. Tanya is the author of the question, so I hope she's happy. Alejandra, thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Alejandra. Alejandra has a very nice channel. Feel free to check her channel too about Power Query. She's an accountant, so she's in the field there, in the war every day, dealing with Power Query. And good, Rita Vaj, Alan, and Fidel. Thank you very much, everyone. Some people are joining from LinkedIn. Some people are joining from YouTube. So that's it. And some people are joining from Facebook. Thank you for your company. Again, a wonderful weekend for everyone, and I'll see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.